But prema bhaktim swakam nipayacha namokshigraho me snidamodareya. To the Supreme Controller, who possesses an eternal form of blissful knowledge, whose glistening earrings swing to and fro, who manifested himself in Gokula, who stole the butter that the gopis kept hanging from the rafters of their storerooms, and who then quickly jumped up and ran in retreat, in fear of Mother Yasoda, but was ultimately caught. To that Supreme Lord, Sri Damodara, I offer my humble obeisances. Okay, you can read? You can read.
You want me to read it?
Second one.
Upon seeing his mother's whipping stick, he cried and rubbed his eyes again and again, and with his two lotus hands. His eyes were fearful and his breathing quick, and as Mother Yashoda bound his belly with ropes, he shivered in fright, and his pearl necklace shook. To this Supreme Lord Sri Damodara, I offer my humble obeisances.
Those super excellent pastimes of Lord Krishna's babyhood drowned the inhabitants of Gokula in pools of ecstasy. To the devotees who are attracted only to his majestic aspect of Narayana in Vaikuntha, the Lord herein reveals, I am conquered and overwhelmed by pure loving devotion. To the Supreme Lord Damodara, my obeisances hundreds and hundreds of times.
O Lord, although you are able to give all kinds of benedictions, I do not pray to you for liberation, nor eternal life in Vaikuntha, nor any other boon. My only prayer is that your childhood pastimes may constantly appear in my mind. O Lord, I do not even want to know your feature of Paramatma. I simply wish that your childhood pastimes may ever be enchanted in my heart,
Enacted.
enacted in my heart.
O Lord, the cheeks of your blackish lotus face, which is encircled by locks of curling hair, have become reddened like bimba fruits due to the mother Yashoda's kisses. What more can I describe than this? Millions of opulences are no use to me, but may this vision constantly remind in my mind.
O unlimited Vishnu, O Master, O Lord, please upon me. I am drowning in an ocean of sorrow and I am almost like a dead man. Please shower the rain of mercy on me. Uplift me and protect me with your nectarian vision.
O Lord Damodara, in your form as a baby, Mother Yashoda bound you to a grinding stone with a rope for tying cows. You then freed the sons of Kuvera, Manigriva, and Nala Kuvara, so the first to stand as queens, and you gave them the chance to become your devotees. Please bless me in the same way. I have no desire for liberation or intelligence.
O Lord, the entire universe was created by Lord Brahma, who was born from your abdomen, which was bound with a rope by Mother Yashoda. To this rope, I offer my humble obeisances. I offer my obeisances to your most beloved Srimati Radharani and to your unlimited pastimes.
Brahmadarashtakam ki jai. Lord Premanandi, Hari Bol. So, we had homework this week, not last week. Yes? Do you have homework? You don't remember? It was a week before,
Yeah,
yeah.
it was a week before, not this week.
But did we have homework?
Yes. Essence of teaching of Bhagavad.
That was the homework? The essence of teaching of Bhagavad Gita. Yes, okay. Anybody do the homework? Anyone do the homework? No? Okay. So, we discussed the essence of the teaching of Bhagavad Gita. That is explained. We must have read several verses explaining that. Let me just double check that.
11.55.
Yes, 11.55. In 1864,
66.
1866,
330.
331, 330. Okay, so let's take a look at 11.55, the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. (1155) says, My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation, who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me. So this is very similar to the verse in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Anya Bilasita Sunyam, Jnana Karma Dinavatam, Anukuyena Krishnanasalanam, Bhakti Uttamam. So, pure bhakti, the definition of pure bhakti is given in this verse and in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So if you look on page, on the third paragraph of the purport of 1155, you will see that verse, Anya Bilasita Sunyam, Jnana Karma Dinavritam, Anukuyena Krishnanasalanam, Bhakti Uttamam. And we'll read. In this verse, Srila Rupa Goswami clearly states that if anyone wants to execute unalloyed devotional service, he or she must be freed from all kinds of material contamination. He or she must be freed from the association of persons who are addicted to fruitive activities and mental speculation. When freed from such unwanted association and from the contamination of material desires, one favorably cultivates knowledge of Krishna. That is called pure devotional service. And on the previous page, in the beginning, first paragraph, it says, anyone who wants to approach the supreme of all the personalities of Godhead on the Krishna Loka planet in the spiritual sky and be intimately connected with the Supreme Personality, Krishna, must take this formula as stated by Krishna, the Supreme Himself. Therefore, this verse is considered to be the essence of Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a book directed to the conditioned souls who are engaged in the material world with the purpose of lording it over nature and who do not know of the real spiritual life. The Bhagavad Gita is meant to show how one can understand the spiritual existence and his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality, and to teach one how to go back home, back to Godhead. So this is very interesting. This is all about what the purpose of life is, as well as what is the purpose of the Vedic knowledge. Yes, I do. So today, we were studying our morning class. The difference between the modern scientists and the evolutionists' understanding of life and the Vedic understanding of life, and especially as presented by Prabhupada. This was in the 8th morning walk of the book, Life Comes from Life. So the atheistic evolutionists say that all life comes from matter. And the Vedas say, life comes from life. Now what does that mean? Well, there's a famous scientist named Louis Pasteur who proved that life comes from life. I'm going to explain how he did it. He did this in the 19th century. He was experimenting with trying to find out about germs, bacteria, and of course you know that the wine industry is very famous in France. So sometimes the winemakers would end up with vinegar instead of wine. Sometimes the vinegar makers would end up with wine instead of vinegar, and they couldn't figure out why. So Pasteur, at that time, had a microscope. You know, they had microscopes since the 16th century, you know, but they were very crude. But by the 19th century, they were getting to be much more sophisticated. So Pasteur was looking at microscopic living entities. Now, some of them are funguses, some of them are yeasts, some of them are just disease, bacteria, and so forth. So he noticed the difference between yeast, let's say, organisms, and bacteria, other bacterial organisms. And he noticed that when you get a certain type of yeast bacteria, it turns the juice, they start with grape juice, but it turns it into wine, alcohol. But then if you get another kind of bacteria, it turns it into vinegar. So now he was trying to figure out, how these bacteria get into the wine. And was it because of the bacteria that sometimes it becomes wine, sometimes it becomes vinegar? So he took some yeast, put it in a bottle, and closed it hermetically, meaning no air can get in, right? And he noticed over a long period of time that it remained intact. It did not go bad. And in fact, it multiplied. Then he did another experiment where he left the bottle open. And eventually, the yeast got attacked by other bacteria and things and eventually died. Right? Or it turned sour or bad. Right? So then he realized that if they want to make wine every time, they have to keep the barrels hermetically closed. They can't let any air get in. And that he noticed that when you leave it open, other things come in and attack it and transform it into something else. And eventually, they die. Things die. That's why it becomes vinegar, because things putrefy. So he proved dramatically that living things come from other living things. They don't come from... So he also put in some dead yeast into a bottle, kept it closed for a long time, nothing happened. It was dead. But the other yeast that he exposed to air, right, where other things got in, it kept proliferating, right? So then he proved that life comes from life, like that. He could understand that things are flying around in the air and they get into the wine, and then it can turn it into vinegar. So the wine has to be protected from any outside thing coming in. Right? And when you put a dead thing in a bottle, it remains dead. It doesn't produce life. So he proved that in the 19th century that life comes from life. It doesn't come from dead things. But the scientists still, until today, are insisting that all life comes from matter, dead matter, and chemicals. So the first major difference between the evolutionists and the Vedic point of view is that life comes from life. It doesn't come from dead things. You can't get a collection of chemicals, put it together, even for an infinite amount of time, and all of a sudden you get one cell and then a human being eventually. Not possible. Then, another major difference is the evolutionists say that all the different species and all the different types of living entities came about over a very long time. But the Vedas say, right from the beginning, all the different species were created. Very similar to what they're doing in Sammamish now. Right? In Sammamish, they're building townhomes, they're building apartments, they're building houses. Now, all the houses are there. Now, depending on how much money you have, you can get either an apartment for rent, you can buy a townhome, or you can buy a big house, right? And they're all different prices. In the same way, every time there's a creation, all the bodies are there, all the species are there, and the living entities enter into them according to the previous karma. In other words, whatever they can afford according to their karma. Right? some people get bodies of demigods, some people get bodies of cockroaches, depending on their karma. And you have all these different species because there are three modes of material nature: goodness, passion, and ignorance. Just like there are three primary colors: red, blue, and yellow. Now, if you go to, let's say, Home Depot, and you're trying to pick a paint color for your house, right, or your walls inside the house, well, you get a palette of colors, right? There are many colors, right? But all those colors, you say, okay, I want number 394. Okay, so the guy that's serving you, he looks up in his book 394 and he sees red 10%, blue 80%, yellow 10%. He mixes it together and you get exactly the color that you chose. So, how many different ways are there that you can mix three things? No, infinite numbers. Because, you can say the first one is 1% red, 98% blue, 2% yellow, or 1% yellow, okay? Then you go 2% red, 97% blue, like that. And then you can start with blue and do the same thing. You can start with yellow and do the same. I mean, you can get an infinite number of colors. So the same way, there are 8,400,000 different species of living entities. According to the way people are influenced, or living entities are influenced by the modes of material nature. Therefore, they're put into a specific body according to their goodness, passion, ignorance mixture. Now, in the case of animals, it's pretty fixed. In the case of human beings, it fluctuates a lot because a person can be in ignorance at night, goodness in the morning, passion in the afternoon, ignorance at night, and it can fluctuate even in one day. But in animals, they are more stringently controlled by the modes, and therefore they have a specific body. Right? So, like a human being, they can be born in a very good family, have a very nice body, and you see this often. They say, "Look what this movie star looked like when she was 18," and you'll be surprised to see how she looks today. So when you see her picture today, after 30 years, she looks like a monster. And you look at her picture when she was 18, she was gorgeous. Right? Now, how did she turn into a monster? Right? Because of bad habits, the mode of ignorance and passion. Right? So drinking, smoking, this thing, that thing. And their body transformed from a very pretty body to a very ugly body. Right? So human beings are much more fluctuating. Animals are not so fluctuating. They're much more strictly controlled by the modes. Okay, and the other way can happen also. Someone can be very, very sick, but they go on an Uncle Harry diet and they take supplements and everything, change their lifestyle, begin to chant Hare Krishna. All of a sudden, they become healthier. Their eyes are brighter, their hair is shinier, they have more energy, and so forth. So you see, human beings can fluctuate more. They have more latitude for fluctuation by controlling the influence of the modes of material nature. The animals, not so much. Right? That's why they're animals. So that every body, every species that you see is a particular, let's say, mixture of goodness, passion, and ignorance. So when you have, cockroaches and snakes and worms and things like that, they're really in the mode of ignorance. Very seriously in the mode of ignorance. But they can go through the evolutionary process. Now, what is the evolutionary process? It's not an evolution of bodies. This is the third difference between the evolutionists and the atheists and Vedic point of view. The Vedic point of view says there is evolution, but it's an evolution of consciousness, not of bodies. The bodies are already created, just like all the apartments, townhomes, and homes are already here. You'll move in the one that you can afford. So all the bodies are there, but you'll get one based on how you're influenced, what your karma is from the previous life, what your desires are, etc. Like somebody likes to eat meat. So when they're a human being, they're eating meat every day. The next life, they get the body of a tiger. Tiger can eat meat all they want. There's no sin. There's no sin for the tiger to eat meat. But for a human being to eat meat is very sinful. unless, let's say, there's a famine or something like that. So the third point, the difference between the evolutionist and the atheist, is that okay, all the bodies were created in the beginning of time, and everything comes from life. They say everything comes from matter. And one gets a body according to their karma. And, okay. So Darwin is saying that the bodies evolve. And the Vedas say consciousness evolves, not the bodies. The bodies are already there. Okay, so you have 3 points so far. Then, there are 2 basic energies in life. There's soul, or life, and there's matter. The materialists and atheists say everything is made of matter, including if there is a soul and consciousness. It'll also, at one point in the evolution of matter, it becomes consciousness, or it could become a soul. Whereas matter and soul are 2 different things. Matter is dependent on the soul. It's not that the soul develops from matter. It's that matter and soul simultaneously are eternal. They're never created and never destroyed. The only thing that's destroyed, nothing is ever destroyed in the spiritual world. The only thing that's destroyed in the material world are the forms of matter. But the matter itself is eternal. But matter is always dependent on the soul. It's not independent. Right? So, for example, you have an arm, right? The arm is dependent on your soul being in the body. If the soul is not in the body, the arm doesn't move. Right? Now, you can cut off the arm, you're still alive. You see? So, the soul is independent of matter. Now, the atheists try and teach us that there's nothing independent of matter, that everything is made of matter. This is a major misconception of life. When a person is convinced like that, then they think, well, getting old, getting sick, and dying is part of life. It's not true. The soul is eternal. It's not subject to getting old, getting sick, and dying. It's only when we get dumbed down to believe that I'm this body that these things happen to us. The soul doesn't have to eat, it doesn't have to sleep, it's never born, and it never dies. Now, as long as the soul is in this body, the body itself is subject to, it goes through 6 stages: birth, staying, growing, producing byproducts like children, dwindling, and dying. These are the 6 stages of life of everybody, whether you're in Devalokas or you're in hell or you're in the earth. Everybody's body goes through these 6 stages. However, a person who knows that I am not the body, they are not in any way disturbed by these 6 stages, and they are not affected by them. In other words, their devotional service is not affected by it. But when you think I am this body, and the goal of life is sense gratification, then you get affected. And it causes misery. So another law of nature that people don't understand is, whenever you try for material sense gratification, it will be accompanied by misery. Now, best example is, it's in the newspaper every day. Now they're talking about this Harvey Weinstein, big movie maker, right? He abused many young women, right? Now, he's suffering like anything. He's thinking of committing suicide because it's become public, all this disgusting behavior. Then, there was Elliot Spitzer, governor of New York. Same thing happened. then this one, then that one. You know, all the news is coming out about all the men that abuse women. And now they're all shamed and they're all suffering. So whenever there is an attempt at material sense gratification, it is always accompanied by suffering. That's a law of nature. It's like the law of gravity. What goes up will come down. People don't understand this. That's why there's so much suffering in life. Because they're ignorant. They think, oh, I can get away with it. I can drink wine. I can go to the bar. I can do this. I can do that. You know, and they break all the principles of civilized life. Intoxication, gambling, meat eating, and illicit activities. Okay, so the next point is, in other words, this point is the spirit is independent and matter is dependent, although they're both eternal. Then, and also matter is never created, it's eternal, and spirit is also eternal. Whereas the materialists, they think things that begin at a certain point, they evolve, they dwindle, and then they disappear, they die. Actually, matter itself is eternal, and this is what's confusing about it, because it can disappear, but it still exists. It goes into a potential state, or inertial state, and it still exists. And this confuses people. Like you look in your bank account, you have money. You go to draw money out with a credit card, and the machine eats your card, and the piece of paper comes out and says you're overdrawn. So you thought you had money, but now you don't have any money. Right? In the same way, we see that matter is always evolving, and at a certain point it disappears, and there's nothing there anymore. Right? It's like your account is minus. Right? So it's confusing to people. People get bewildered by the fact that things disappear and never come back. Loved ones and so forth. Their soul is still living, but the body they had is not living. It goes back into the elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether. So then, the three modes of material nature control the living entities who believe that the goal of life is sense gratification. Now, the materialists, evolutionists say, no, there's nobody, no superior thing controlling us. We are independent. No one is independent. We are all being controlled by the laws of material nature, which are under the control of Krishna. So the materialists and the evolutionists, they make these fake philosophies that man is independent in this world. No one is independent. We're all dependent, ultimately, on Krishna. Then, yes, another major point is the materialists say everything can be understood by chemistry, physics, mathematics. But at the origin of life, there's mystical power that bewilders people. Now, how do we know that? For example, look at the ocean. Water is made of H2O, right? H2, 2 hydrogen atoms, 1 oxygen atom. How much hydrogen, how much oxygen do you think there is in the Pacific Ocean? What do you think?
Lot.
Yeah,
Almost
an incredible amount, right? So now, if you were in a high school or a college chemistry class and the teacher said, today we're going to make H2O. We got some hydrogen here, we bought it from this laboratory supply company. It cost $30, we have a canister of it. And we got some oxygen, that is canister, it's a little cheaper, it only costs $20. And we got this chamber, it's a pressurized chamber, that costs, $1,000. And we have this heat source, that costs $500. Right? And now we're going to make 1 molecule of H2O. Right? Now, to make one molecule of H2A costs, a couple $100, right? Now, where did all the H and where did the O come from for the ocean?
Nature of Krishna provided.
Well, you see, something mystical happens. You can't imagine how that happened. I mean, we know how we made one molecule of H2O in the laboratory cleanse. It cost a lot of money, a lot of effort. We had to have, specialized equipment and so forth, right? Here we're looking at the ocean, there's an infinite amount of H2O, right? And it's condensing, going up, and I was looking at a cloud today. A normal cloud has 1 million pounds of water. Did you know that? One cloud, one big cloud, has 1 million pounds of water. How come it doesn't come crashing down and destroy everybody's house? You ever try and figure that out? That cloud above us is 1 million pounds of water. How come it just doesn't come crashing down and destroy the house? Because the water is dispersed in such a way that the air can carry those minuscule droplets. Now when the droplets coalesce, they come together, they become heavier, then it falls. And it's all dependent on temperature. The difference between heat and cold. See? That's a miracle. Could you move 1 million pounds of water? No, you could, but it could cost you, $500,000, right? Right? But these are all mystical things, aren't they? Whenever you see the scientists, all they do is deal with the middle. They don't deal with the beginning or the end. So, for example, someone told Prabhupada, said, Prabhupada, the scientists say everything's created by chemicals. Prabhupada said, where did the chemicals come from? They say, we don't know. They were just there. So, Prabhupada said, this is not science. Why? Because if you study just the middle, but you don't study the origin and the end, it's not science. If you study just the middle, you just have a partial understanding of nature. You have to know the origin also. And he said, whenever you go to the origin, you'll end up with mystical power. Something you cannot imagine. Just like, here's a glass of water, we understand it, right? You try and figure out where all the hydrogen and oxygen came from to make the ocean, you get confused. Or, let's say you go to Gangotri. Isn't that the origin of the Ganga?
Yes.
And you see a big cave, and water is coming out. Where's the water come from? Anyone ever go into that cave? You ever hear, journey into the discovery of the Ganga? Did anyone ever go into that cave? Try and discover where that water is coming from? Obviously it's a lot of water, right? The Ganga is a big river. Of course, there are tributaries also. So you end up with something mystical every time. Therefore, mystical power is everywhere. For example, can you fly in the air? No. But the bird can fly. So the bird has some mystical power that you don't have and I don't have. But you have some mystical power also that the bird might not have. You make wax. You make tears. You make saliva. You make blood. You make nails. You make skin. You make, teeth. You make beards, right? So your body is a chemistry factory, chemical factory. But you make a limited amount of those things. Now imagine the Virat Rupa, the universal body of Krishna in the material world. It makes mountains, rivers, lakes, oceans, right? You make perspiration, Krishna makes oceans. It all comes from his body. Just like perspiration comes from your body, Krishna's perspiration is an ocean from his Virat Rupa form. You see. Now that's inconceivable, but you have the same inconceivable power, but very limited, where Krishna has it unlimited. You see. Anyway, these are all the things discussed. There's a lot more discussed in this book. It's very interesting, but a very short book also. It's not a long book. So, therefore, this essence of Bhagavad Gita is teaching us how to correct all the mistakes that the materialists, the evolutionists, the fake scientists, all the fake news that they've put into our brain through public education and false propaganda, all that nonsense. Unless we get these false concepts out of the brain, then we think it's normal to get old, it's normal to die, it's normal to get sick, and if we take birth again, that's also normal. It is not normal. Therefore it says, Janma Mityu Jara Vyadi Dukkha Darshanam. 13th chapter, 8th to 12th verse. These two lines are there. One of the 20 aspects of real knowledge is to perceive the evil of birth, death, old age, and disease. The evil of it. There's something wrong with it. What's wrong with it? It's being imposed on our eternal soul. We have an eternal soul, but we get so dumbed down by material education. We think it's normal to be born, to get old, to get sick and die. And therefore we don't do anything to try and get out of that cycle. It's not normal. There's something evil about it. Of course, you see someone you love get cancer and dwindle away and then finally die. You think, this is not good. Why did this happen? But you think, well, that's just life. It's not life. It is ignorance. And as long as we entertain that ignorance in our mind, we suffer. And we don't do anything to get out of it. We don't do anything to get out of it. So there's no difference between an animal and a human being in that case. The animal is taken to the slaughterhouse and it's eating grass. The animal, before it goes into the pen and gets its head cut off, he still keeps eating grass. And then they try and force that animal in. Then the animal starts to fight back, but it's too late. They can't get out. And then they get their head cut off. And all the other animals are still eating grass, thinking everything is all right. Is it? What's the difference between those animals and us? If we think birth, death, old age, and disease is normal, and we're not doing anything to stop it. We're just going merrily to the party, to the bar, to the casino, to Disneyland. Instead of meditating on Krishna, we're meditating on Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. And we think it's normal. It's not normal. It's only due to ignorance. So the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, therefore, is this verse, 1155. My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation, he who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his or her life, and who is friendly to every living entity, he certainly comes to me. So here, you don't have to read the whole Bhagavad Gita, just learn this one verse. Mat karma krin, mat paramo, mat bhakta, sankavarjita, nirvairak sarvabhutesu yasamam etipandavam. This one verse has everything in it. And that one purport has everything in it. Okay, so now we're back to chapter 1. And where were we? Verse 8?
11.
11. Okay, good. I'm glad you're keeping track. I have to keep track of too many different classes. I get confused. Okay, so let's read. Go ahead. See if you can chant the Sanskrit.
Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagu.
Wait a minute. Chapter 1, verse 11. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Ayaneshu cha sarveshu yatha bhagu gavamavasthitah bhishme va dhirakshantu bhavantu sarva evahi. All of you must now give you full support to Grandfather Bhishma as you stand at your respective strategic points of interest into the phalanx of the army. Purport. Duryodhana, after praising the prowess of Bhishma, further considered that others might think that they had been considered less important. So, in his usual diplomatic way, he tried to adjust the situation in the above words. He emphasized that Bhishma Deva was undoubtedly the greatest hero, but he was an old man, so everyone must especially think of his protection from all sides. He might become engaged in fight and the enemy might take advantage of his full engagement on one side. Therefore, it was important that the other heroes not leave their strategic positions and allow the enemy to break the phalanx. Duryodhana clearly felt that the victory of the Kurus depended on the presence of Bhishma Deva. He was confident of the full support of Bhishma Deva and Dronacharya in the battle because he well knew that they did not even speak a word when Arjuna's wife Draupadi, in her helpless condition, had appealed to them for justice while she was being forced to appear naked in the presence of all the great generals in the assembly. Although he knew that the two generals had some sort of affection for the Pandavas, he hoped that these generals would now completely give it up as they had done during the gambling performance.
So you see how Duryodhana and his father Dhritarashtra were a little bit worried. But then, because they cannot calculate from a spiritual point of view, by calculating materially, their worry went away. Because they saw that they had superior fighters on their side. And they discounted, they just ignored Krishna because he was not allowed to fight. This is a major mistake. This is the way materialists calculate. They calculate in counting how much money they have, how many important friends they have, politicians, businessmen, and so forth, and how they are smarter than other people, blah, blah, blah. And they just ignore Krishna. Therefore, they're all defeated. And we explain what the 5 factors of every action is. The place, meaning the body. The performer, the soul. The senses. The endeavor itself. And Krishna. So most people may consider the first 4 things, but not Krishna. Therefore, just like Duryodhana, even though they have superior material power, they get defeated. This happens a lot. So, a devotee always knows that nothing happens without the will of the Lord. Of Krishna. Therefore, he never acts without having confirmation from spiritual authority, like Guru and Sadhu, to perform a certain action. So Arjuna, when he had a choice between Krishna's army and Krishna, he took Krishna, and Duryodhana thought he was a stupid guy. He got the entire Yadu army. And Arjuna just got Krishna, but Krishna is not allowed to fight. And then Duryodhana, being a very clever strategist and diplomat, he had Bhisma Pitamaha tied up because of family obligations. He had Dronacharya tied up because of financial obligations. And he saw that they didn't do anything when Duryodhana and his men were trying to strip Draupadi in a public forum. So they thought, well, you can see there's reason. If they didn't do anything then that means they'll fight now with full force. So these are all material calculations, and he's completely ignoring the Krishna factor. Therefore, he's destined to fail. No matter how clever he is, no matter how great of a strategist and diplomat he is, he will definitely fail. Not only that, the battle is taking place in a holy place, Kurukshetra. That's another minus for him. Right? It's a place of dharma, and he is acting in a dharmic way. So you see how Krishna gives knowledge to the devotees and remembrance, and forgetfulness to the non-devotees. And because of that forgetfulness, they ultimately fail. They succeeded for a little while, and then they ultimately fail. Therefore, a devotee is like a man walking down the street, and he sees another man sawing off the branch on which he's sitting. So he knows what's going to happen in the near future. That man's going to fall down. If he tries to warn him, the man says, "Hey, mind your own business. You know, who do you think you are, telling me what to do?" Okay, so you can't even warn the person, right? He's so blind. But you know what's going to happen. So when you see these people, the Hindus, eating meat, drinking, going to the parties, going to the nightclub, gambling, all that, you know what's going to happen. Yeah, it looks like they're happy now. But whenever there's sense gratification, it's always followed by misery. And we see it in public. We see all these big people going down one after the other. Because they engaged in massive sense gratification, and then the karma comes crashing down on them. And no matter how big and no matter how powerful they are, they all are crushed under the weight of that dharma. So therefore, seeing all these things, we should be convinced that I should follow the regulative principles. The only protection I have is following the regulative principles of spiritual life. And like we said, there are 4 fundamental regulative principles, but 4 means 8. The 4 things you shouldn't do, the 4 things you should do. So there's actually 8 principles. Right? The do's and the don'ts, the yamas and the niyamas. Now, why is it that a person so clever and so intelligent as Duryodhana is so blind? People get blinded by lust. Lust is the all-devouring enemy of the human being. Kama esa krodha esa ragaguna samudbhava, rajaguna samudbhava, mahasana mahapapma, vidyenam iha vairinam. Vairinam means the most vicious enemy of the human being is lust. Lust is more than desire. Kama is lust. Lust is an obsessive desire. It's not simply a desire. Oh, I would like to be a millionaire. But I'm too lazy to do anything about it. Okay. That's not lust. That's a desire, right? But lust is, even if I risk my life, I'm going to be a millionaire. And I'll do it whether it's legally or illegally. So he's going to risk his life. He's going to work day and night. He's going to eat less, sleep less, make all kinds of austerities. But he has to get that thing. Okay. So lust is extremely dangerous and is considered Vairinam, the greatest enemy. It is lust only, Arjuna, which is born of contact with the material mode of passion and later transformed into wrath or anger, and which is the all-devouring sinful enemy of this world. This is 3rd chapter, 37th verse. So what is lust? Lust is actually love of God transformed. When the object of our desire is Krishna, that becomes love. When the object of our desire is something material, it becomes lust. It's just like electricity. It's the same energy that runs a refrigerator or runs a heater. But in one case it heats, in the other case it cools. So this desire for love, when it's directed toward Krishna, it becomes real love. When it's directed towards a material thing, it becomes lust. Okay. Just like a knife, if you use it to cut vegetables to offer to Krishna, it's a good thing. If it uses it to kill somebody, it's a bad thing. Is the knife intrinsically good or bad?
It's
No.
not.
No, it's neutral. It's how you use it. So if we direct our desire to Krishna, to please Krishna, it develops into love. If we direct our desire to exploit another person, it becomes lust. So nowadays, you see that there are robots, right? They make robots that look exactly like women and like men. Now, there's a new field of law. Men and women are marrying robots. It's a new thing now. They fall in love with the robot. Is that love? No, it's lust. It has nothing to do with love. You see, so this is not this is science. Love is when you direct your desire to please Krishna. That becomes love. And when you direct your desire to enjoy sense gratification with a human being or with a robot, it becomes lust. An obsessive desire. Right? So then it says, Dumen avriyate vahnir, yato darso malenacha, yato beino avrito garbas, tata tenitam, anavritam, avritam, I'm sorry. So it says, as fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by different degrees of lust. So, as fire is covered by smoke, that's compared to a human being. Human being, there is fire, but it's covered by smoke. Now, if you carefully fan that, you can separate the smoke from the fire, and all of a sudden the fire becomes very strong. Right? That means a human being has a great chance for self-realization. But then there's the mirror covered by dust. That's a human being that's really like in the mode of lust, lusty. So they see things, but they can't actually make out exactly what they are. So they make many mistakes. They mistake the robot to be their object of love, or they mistake lust for love. They're making mistakes because they can't see clearly. And then the womb that covers the embryo, that is the animals. There's no possibility of understanding their situation. There might be a very slight possibility of understanding for the person in passion. Like the mirror that's covered with dust. It might. But the embryo covered by the womb, that means one is completely covered by ignorance, no possibility at all for self-realization. And this is giving 3 examples of the degrees of lust and how, like if you look at Duryodhana, he is definitely the mirror covered by dust. He has a chance. He's a very brilliant guy. He has a chance, but because he sees everything in a mirror covered by dust, he's not seeing things properly. He keeps making mistakes. I mean, he wants to strip Draupadi in a public place. I mean, that was a huge mistake. He thought he got away with it. But you can never get away with something like that when you try and defile a pure devotee like her. And then Avritam Jnanam Etena, Jnani no Nityavaidinam. The word Vaidinam comes back again. Greatest enemy. Kama Rupena Konteya, Dusparena Nalenacha. Thus, the wise living entity's pure consciousness becomes covered by his eternal enemy in the form of lust, which is never satisfied and which burns like fire. So when people are lusty, it burns like fire. You know, they're agitated all the time. They easily get angry. Because anything that frustrates their lusty desires makes them angry right away. So whenever you see people that get angry right away, you know now what their disease is, lust. They have very strong material desires, and anything that's an obstacle to getting their material desires becomes an object of their wrath, their anger. And they can become extremely angry. There's such a thing as road rage, there's such a thing as crimes of passion, all these things, because people are overwhelmed with lust. And any little thing that obstructs them getting what they want, they get angry. Very fast. Just like Kamsa, he's driving his sister to her husband's house, the family house, right? Right after they're married, right after they had a great time. You know, I mean, Indian weddings go on like for months, sometimes 3 weeks or a month, right? After all that fun, now he's driving them back, and he hears a voice. Oh, the 8th child of your sister will kill you. Immediately he grabs his sister and is going to cut her head off. That's the symptom of a lusty person. It's switch almost immediately from friendship to hatred, from peace to violence. It can happen in a split second because of the lusty nature. And then Indriyani Mano Buddhir Asya Distanam Uchyate Etat Vimohaya Esa and Jnanam Avritam Dehinam. The senses, the mind, and the intelligence are the sitting places of this lust. Through them, lust covers the real knowledge of the living entity and bewilders him. Therefore, in order to become self-realized, you must rise above the body, the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. In other words, the senses, the mind, and intelligence. Because these are the places where lust inhabits, takes hold. And they have to be purified. So a devotee rises above the influence of the senses and the mind and the intelligence through spiritual cultivation, spiritual life, spiritual lifestyle. That lifestyle is extremely important to rise above the influence of lust, which inhabits the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. And then, tasmat tvam indriyanyado niyamya bharatar sabha papmanam prajahiyenam jnana vijnananasanam. Therefore, Arjuna, best of the Bharatas, in the very beginning curbed this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization. In other words, a lusty person, very difficult for them to assimilate spiritual knowledge, and very difficult for them to become self-realized. Therefore, one must regulate lust by following the principles of Krishna consciousness. That's what it does. It raises a person from tamas to rajas to sattva, guna, and then up further to Visuddha Sattva, transcendental goodness, where one is above the influence of the senses, the mind, and the intelligence. One is on the spiritual platform. And then Indriyani para ahur, Indriyadya para mana, manasastu manasastu para buddhir, yogude paratastu sa. The working senses are superior to dull matter. The mind is higher than the senses, and the intelligence is still higher than the mind, and he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence. So we're trying to elevate to the soul level. The senses are attracted to things by sensuous attraction. Right? Something smells good, we're attracted to it. Let's say there's a person who hasn't taken a bath for a week, but they put on an expensive cologne. And they smell good, and you smell the person, oh, that person smells good. You're trying to get a little closer to smell a little more. But actually the person hasn't taken a bath for a week. It's just masking the dirt. So, we can get fooled. Senses are easily fooled. Then the mind accepts and rejects based on sense perception. So the mind can be fooled easily too. Just like Surpanaka transformed herself into a beautiful woman. Right? And, well, that's what the movie stars do too. They're actually ugly, but they put so much makeup on and fix their hair and put high heels and tight dresses and everything, and you think, oh, she's very beautiful. But actually, if you see them without the makeup on, they look very ugly. Right? So, this is what the demons do also. Of course, the demons do it with mystical power, and the movie stars do it with Botox and other tricks like that. Plastic surgery, that's a big one. Plastic surgery is a big, big one. You know. So, then the mind is easily fooled also. And then the intelligence, infected with lust, uses very intelligent, let's say, mechanisms to increase more illusion, more lusty behavior. Right? So, therefore, we have to come to the spiritual level, the soul level. If we stay on the sense level, mind level, intelligence level, we can be fooled. Come to the spiritual level, you cannot be fooled. Right? Why? Because we taught the kids last week 4 principles of infallible logic. You remember them, Arush? Anukuliyana, Sankalpa, Pratikuliyana Varjana, Smartavya, Satatam, Vishnu, Vishmartavya, Najatacha. What? Except what?
Except everything which is favorable.
4.
Is Krishna.
Krishna consciousness, yeah, 1.
Reject everything which is not favorable
2.
to Krishna. Remember Krishna
3.
and never forget Krishna.
4! You got it. Bingo! You win. So these are 4 principles of infallible logic. If you follow these 4 principles, you'll never make a mistake in life. Right? Accept only those things favorable for Krishna consciousness. Reject everything that's unfavorable. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. Then you'll never make a mistake in life. Right? You don't have to study these big books of logic, you know. A is equal to C, therefore, and C is equal to B, therefore A is equal to B. You know, I mean, and then there's like a whole bunch of different combinations of that, right? Socrates figured out, I don't know, 100 different combinations of that. And, you know, that's logic, you know. And all you have is A, B, C in your brain, you know, you don't understand. You can't, you know, when you see meat, you'll still choose to eat meat. Right? You'll apply A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and you'll still eat meat. Because it's, you know, it's not real logic. Yeah, they teach you to think logically in order to make programs and things like that. You know, but that doesn't teach you infallible logic by which you can go back to Godhead. But you learn just these 4 things. Even a little kid can learn it, right? Arush, how old are you? 8 years old. 8 years old, he knows more logic than PhDs at the University of Washington. Because they're teaching logic, but they're eating meat, they're gambling, they're philandering, and they're smoking marijuana. Maybe not all of them, you know, and maybe not doing all 4 things, but even if they do one of those 4 things and teach logic, they're not a logician. They're a log. You know, a log is a piece of dead wood. Okay. So, then, it also says, this third chapter, the end of the third chapter is very wonderful. And it says, Evam budhe param budva samstayab atmanam atmana jahisatru mahabaho kamarupam duras sadam. Thus, knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind, and intelligence. This is what we've been talking about, right? Coming above the level of the senses, the mind, and intelligence to the spiritual level. O mighty Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence. Spiritual intelligence is different than material intelligence. Material intelligence, that's Duryodhana, always calculating materialistically. Spiritual intelligence, you take 5 factors into consideration, and the 5th factor is the most important, Krishna. Duryodhana is only taking 4 factors into consideration. He's ignoring the Krishna factor. Therefore, he will fail. So, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength, conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust. Now let's read the purport. This purport is extremely important. Who wants to read?
So the other 4 factors are Kala, Desha.
It's the place, meaning the body or the physical place, right? It's the person, it's the senses, it's the endeavor, and then Krishna. Go ahead. Sundara.
Thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence, O mighty armed Arjuna, one should steady the mind by deliberate spiritual intelligence, that is Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy
Insatiable.
enemy known as lust. Purport by His Divine Grace is equal to This third chapter of Bhagavad Gita is conclusively directive to Krishna consciousness by knowing oneself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Personality of the Godhead, without considering impersonal voidness the ultimate end. In the material existence of life, one is certainly influenced by propensities for lust and desire for dominating the resources of material nature.
Yeah, everybody wants to be Jeff Bezos.
Desire for overloading and for sense gratification is the greatest enemy of the conditioned soul. But by the strength of Krishna consciousness, one can control the material senses, the mind and the intelligence. One may not give up work and prescribed duties all of a sudden, but by gradually developing Krishna consciousness, one can be situated in a transcendental position without being influenced by the material senses and the mind, by steady intelligence directed toward one's pure identity. This is the sum total of this chapter. In the immature stage of material existence, philosophical speculations and artificial attempts to control the senses by the so-called practice of yogic postures can never help a man towards spiritual life. He must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence.
Okay, homework. Explain what the training is in Krishna consciousness. Explain what the training is. What is he talking about? He says you must be trained in Krishna consciousness by higher intelligence. Write a little essay on what the training is. It says yogic postures will not help. Right? Putting your foot behind your ear, breathing through one nostril, it's not going to help. It'll help you maybe get a little healthier, but it's not going to help you go back to Godhead. Right? You don't go back to Godhead with your foot behind your head and holding one nostril like this.
Shravanam Kirtanam.
Huh?
Shravanam Kirtanam.
Yeah, you go hearing and chanting and feasting. Feasting. Don't forget feasting. That's important. So that's our homework. And you get a plus in the homework if you can relate, if you can also explain what is Duryodhana's shortcoming. What is Duryodhana's shortcoming? You take notes so you remind me what the homework is next week, right? I've already done the homework, so I don't have to do it. So you have two aspects. One is, what is the training in Krishna consciousness he's talking about in this purport? And number two, you get extra bonuses, extra points, explain Duryodhana's shortcoming. Or its fault. Fatal fault. It's called the fatal fault. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Premanandi. Lift that thing up. Lift that up. Hare Krishna.
This is 3 minutes.
Yeah, this goes on.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
thought it goes for
Made in India. Hey, we need you to drive. We need you to drive next week. We need you to drive next week. Free Saturday. We have a big festival in Settleson, Diwali festival.
Oh yes, yes. I'm taking off on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, Sunday is already off for me.
Oh,
Yes, we will go.
okay.
Yes, definitely. For that, yeah, I'm taking things for that. We are saying for Taraka Prabhu, we are doing something in Amazon's.
Yeah, we're also doing something in Amazon.
Yes, on Thursday.
Catering 1,200 people inside Amazon.
That's what he told me. So he said I'm off on the day.
That's
so
Saturday, and then Sunday we have to go to...
Friday we are Govardhan Puja. Sunday, Saturday we are going.
Yeah, but we have to load the truck someday also. One of those days, for the festival.
Friday I'm taking off, so I'll be loading the truck on Friday.
You're not taking off. You're going to be working harder than you've ever worked.
Taking off from the other one.
We're going to be working the whole weekend. We have a festival Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and
Sunday is wind up and clean up everything.
It's amazing. So Amazon called us, you know why? One lady named Vrunda Patel, she came to Ananda Mela, and she loved it. She just loved it. You know, she ate the chaat and she ate the Manchurian, and she loved everything. So she's one of the organizers of events for the Indian community within Amazon. It's not only for the Indians, for everybody, right? But especially Indians. So she's on that committee. So she called us up and said, you know, I was really impressed by what you're doing for our community. And the food was so good. We want you to cater our event. And if it goes well, you'll cater more events for us. And we want you to showcase what you're doing with a PowerPoint presentation during the Diwali festival. We'll project it. Amazing. Huh? Now you know why we do Ananda Mela. You know, people go, oh, you're spending all that money. What is it good for? You know. What is it good for? Yeah.
Talk the language people can understand.
And you know, they're buying some diyas from us. They're going to give us like over $7,000 for catering. Yeah. It's all because we did Ananda Mela. Now, because we're part of the Festal program, I propose doing another festival to the South Center. It's called Compassion. We're going to do a festival for homeless people. You submitted the application today. I already did a pre-application, they liked it very much, they gave me the full application. If they agree, and we do a good job, it's going to be a very big thing. It's a big problem. We'll see. We'll see. But we're engaging our kids to organize.
Two types of magazines. One on the Christmas holiday.
It's a project.
One on the other.
Junior high school, high school.
It shows like tips.
And this next Saturday, Diwali Festival, Lieutenant Governor
For example,
of Washington is coming, Cyrus Habib. State Senator in Washington is coming. And Claudia Baldacci, a King County council person is coming. All three big people. We're preparing a brochure to give them for the festival that we want to do. Of course, this festival will be successful only if we're able to bring together government agencies and private agencies and churches who are all doing something for homeless people. Have them all there explaining what they do for homeless people that will come, showing all the services that are available for them, and plus for the general public who want to help homeless people. All the organizations, governmental, private, religious, they're doing things. It's the first time anything like that's been done. And there are a lot, like City of Seattle, in 1 year they're spending $50 million.
I know. I've seen how they spend and what they spend.
Is it on drugs?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes if someone is addicted, they give purchases usually. Instead of getting out of it, they say, okay, I give it to you for the way of doing stuff.
Because the election also.
No?
The mayor election is there.
Yeah. And they kicked the other mayor out. Child molester.
I want to ask you one thing. I remember you told me that we have to make some cards that we can move things easily. But probably I want to talk to you, Prabhu. When I made some estimation about it and how much it will cost us, and it turned out to be like more than the item the storage cost is like multiple times. I also looked into like if you buy some sort of trailer and keep the things on it, so it's easy to haul it, load it, and just come and drop it and leave.
$8,000.
Trailers here. Trailers are also costing. No, bro, the used trailers, they come, but I don't know whether how to buy this trailer. Like, cars are easy to buy in this country, but they are all personal things like the weight and the size, structure, they all needs to be evaluated.
That's why I have my pickup truck. That's why I have my pickup truck. My pickup truck is very powerful. You have to have a vehicle that can pull so many pounds. If you don't, then you ruin the vehicle.
Yes. So what's happening is, that's why I want to talk to you about why I calculated the weight that we want to try. It's like, I'm struggling to make a decision there, like what is more economical and viable for us actually. I also looked into, let's say, if we want to build our own trailer, right? Like we buy the base and build our own trailer, that is like too much effort.
We would have to pass inspection.
Oh yeah, so we have to get approval for that also. I see that
You make a mistake,
they will just
push thousands of dollars.
So I want to know about that, bro, but also I want to take your guidance on it. So probably once this festival season, this Diwali is over, I will talk about it. And whatever we come up with that. At least I want to do something before the next Anand Mela. And you told that for making that floor even and easily get things and out. First, at least I want to do the simple stuff first. And we'll go talk to once Jana comes back and do that. And also,
Jana made some good cards.
yes.
You don't have to get any cards.
He makes good cards too, but the size and this of the card, so probably I have to talk to him also when he is there. The size of the card and how we
You
keep
make the
things.
same card but bigger. Make the same card but bigger. Longer. I wouldn't make it any wider, but make it longer.
So I want it more like a taller card. But also think of the 3 items we have to put it in the card are the cinder blocks, the wooden planks, and the tent. I think if we cover these 3 because they form our major load actually. Of course, then we will target the kitchen item and the refrigerators. Actually.
Well, you can put all those things on the cards we have now.
Refrigerator can go now.
In the truck. In the cart we can put it, but these 3 items, right? So we spend. The thing is like the questions came out because how do we load, load things quickly or wind up quickly when we do online. So that's where the question comes up. So that's why I'm thinking like which one is easier to do. And, because the thing is like we have to load all these wooden planks and thing on the night, come and then unload also. But if I have something that we load it, then I leave it
The
there.
only way you can do it. Go to Home Depot and see what they do. They have these.
They have the forklift problem, but the forklift probably we can try it once. That's what they do.
We don't have the warehouse to do it properly.
Yes.
We need a warehouse.
That's why I thought
Come to my factory, you'll see. We have the forklift, we have the warehouse, we have the shelves.
so it is easy to load and unload. That's all. If you put,
Yeah, well, we unload and unload.
this is why I want to talk to you about like how do we do that and probably also like the most economical way of doing that also, right?
We don't have to buy a warehouse. Strongly way. You could probably. Okay. I don't know if I can do it. Everything is delicious, but I don't know if I can do this. Just take a little bit of everything.
Okay, so probably
You have to buy a warehouse. That's the only way you can do it. You can't do it any other way.
tell me why is calling me.
You want salad too?
You would have to buy a warehouse because you need that flat concrete floor. And you would have to get a loading dock. When the truck backs up, you can just go into the truck with the
With very easily that they can load
yeah,
all
with
those.
the
Like Safeway, bro, like Safeway or KFC, they load and load. They just touch the truck with the warehouse there inside. There is no gap moving.
And also they have a very good forklift that just load and unload. So they don't
come to
have
the factory, you'll see it. We have it all that stuff.
Okay, bro. Welcome and talk to you. Take this one.
Literally, this time we did a great improvement in cinder blocks and then level. It was like very quick,
Was it with the pallet?
like amazingly fast. I was like surprised at how much time we were spending and last Anand Mela, how quickly we have done the cinder block. Loading to the truck from the pallet, just a few minutes, whole truck got loaded. And no one need to hurt their back like up and down. Like.
And unloading also, right?
Yeah, you need the truck with the lift gate.
That was amazing.
All right, see, those are the type of solutions we have to do. You can't afford to get a big truck, you can't afford to have a factory, but we can do it like we did it. Using a powerful hand forklift,
We can lift most of the items.
pallet, not filling the pallets up too much. So we can handle it, and the forklift fits on the lift gate.
For the forklift, we put it in the lift gate, and the unloading is also the same. That
Same way.
we take it from the lift gate and then move it inside. I will talk to you in detail, bro. Like whatever it is. I want a simple solution and also not like too costly also for us. Because I asked one day that
Look, we could do all this if cement
on the
outside the,
I asked some guys they started quoting for the square feet during they started quoting from 16 grams to 25 grams. So that's what
worth it.
one time.
It's worth it. You do it one time. If you want them to do a good job with it. You know, they just want it to rock with. You want it to last like that for the next 20 years.
That's true. Okay, bro. I'll come and talk to you, bro. So probably we will talk about the options and then I don't know about
A hand forklift, like the one we get from Uncle Harry's, doesn't cost more than $400 or $500.
that is easy to get.
A good one, powerful, maybe it goes $1,000.
From you,
But when
I
they
see
have
some electrical forklift, but I'm not sure that gas operated electrical forklift. If
They have electrical battery for it.
so even if there is something that simply moves, right, that would be really good.
No, a good forklift. A used one, a decent used one could cost $8,000. But then you'd be able to do it, with wheels running on propane gas.
Then you'll be able to lift most of the items that you do.
Yeah, but again, it needs concrete.
Concrete roads, yeah, that's true. I'll come and talk to you, bro.
But that type of forklift,
So, while reading the
you would have
magazine,
to
you can have
transport it
dinner by
to the festival
adding
site.
chocolate.
Festival site also have concrete or asphalt.
That's what I remember looking at the forklift for last year. Then even renting forklift, right? They say that $250 per day for rent, an electrical forklift. You can get it, but the transportation was so I need to get a truck for the transportation. So
Well, Uncle Harry's has a truck.
to transfer the forklift.
We have a truck with a lift gate. In fact, I'm going to borrow it this next weekend. I want you to drive it. You see, I only drive it. I know you're a good driver.
Okay. Thank you so much, bro. I'm going to take a shower.
We can't be unrealistic. We have to have simple solutions that are not too expensive. But spending $16,000 to put a concrete slab down, it's worth it.
I found that it is usually hard to take things in and out of that place.
Yeah.
If you can make that like a, hey, with a bulk I put it somewhere and then with something I take it, then it will be easier. Thank you so much.
We'll do it.
Putting concrete where, bro? Putting concrete where?
In the loading and in the farm,
Oh, in the
we had to do right. The problem is to get things out. I cannot really put something in a trolley inside and move the trolley.
inside that shed.
Inside the shed also and also the outside also. When the truck has to go in, all you do is move things, just let's say if you put things in cart and just move it. If you can do that.
All the planks you can move also with a forklift. But see, I can put forklift things, pallet holders on my tractor. I saw how to do it. You just have to buy those forks. And then you screw them onto the front loader on the tractor.
Oh, okay. And put it in then the tractor can pull the forklift.
It's just like a forklift. That's why I bought that tractor. It's extremely powerful tractor. But it can lift things up and down. But you wouldn't be able to
Move it on
take
a
it to the festival.
festival side, yeah.
You'd still have to use the hand forklift.
But even on the festival side, right, even if we put it down in the cement floor where nearby the this thing, right? From there it's all like we have the small tractor to load it and then do it. Inside on the festival site to set up and even to wind up there are people. And we lack it when you go to the farm, there is not enough people to unload it and keep it. So that's where we want to make it. That's where we want to make it very easy for them.
But this
And
time,
loading in the
those
farm
kids, those were there, they are really very enthusiastic, very nice people.
Yeah.
Homer and friends? Homer and
And also, like, I also had a doubt in mind. Okay, all this for one day. Probably I saved like 2-3 hours for like 10 people for that one day. So how much I have to spend on it, right? It's also cost thing I'm thinking of it. We'll see, bro. I'll come and talk to you in detail, bro. And we'll have probably arrange some meetings. We'll talk and what are the best suggestions you have that you want to
Yeah. As long as you have the forklift and the truck,
and the parts actually.
I mean, wherever we go, it's going to be concrete or asphalt.
That's true. There's always
We
a
have a small tractor to move things around. I mean, the festival at the Bellevue, I collected almost all the concrete things with one guy. He and I worked together.
what do you call
Put them on the pallet, and then we all put up in the truck. It took us 2 hours.
But if the proper forklift is there, it's all like within minutes that we'll just take it and load it inside the truck.
You don't need it, as long as the truck has a lift gate.
Oh, all you need is just put it in the lift gate. But if you have to put it inside the truck, right?
You do that with the forklift, with the hand forklift.
Oh, then you go up and then just move that forklift.
That's what we did. Right? You said it went pretty quickly. So you need the truck. We spent $16,000. Concrete slabs.
Then it will be easy to use
And
that.
buy a truck. Truck costs like $30,000.
Like 5 trucks.
Anyway, it's cheaper to rent the trucks.
That's true, bro. Cheaper
No
than-
maintenance cost, just rent it and return.
No insurance.
I paid like for all the per truck I paid like $80 or $90.
That's all?
Like one day, right? One day $80.
That's good.
With all the insurance and everything. So that's what next time I'm
No
planning.
use
Like,
buying a truck.
yeah, probably next time I thought, okay, instead of 2 trucks, I just buy 5 trucks, or whatever you want, small trucks, people can drive it and unload it and
Exactly.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks for
It's better to plan like this rather than some big concrete. We should definitely do.
That's what I'm also thinking. Every time moving in and out is hard. We have to make that floor and take things out easily and load it up, get it up to the truck and
It's
load
worth it.
it.
It's worth it, believe me. Did you see the peacocks?
Yeah, I saw the peacocks. I went to the farm couple days before to unload something. And so I saw the peacocks. They are nice additions to our farm.
It's too light season for them, bro. This is like pretty nice rain and cold. They will come out. Fall is very good for them.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna.
I will come back. I will see the peacocks. I will show to kids as well. They have not seen the peacocks so far.
They found their place.
The first room.
The whole warehouse. They're in the first room during the day, and then they go somewhere else inside. They know. They don't want to get caught by coyotes or anything. The mother peacock was eaten.
What mother peacock what?
Eaten, was killed.
Oh, killed. What happened?
I think the coyotes got it. Either coyotes or a bobcat. You have these small lions, mountain lions. In the forest. They're very dangerous. Or it was the coyotes. One or the other.
She got killed in the farm area or somewhere?
Yeah, the second day she was there. But she went away. She was hiding in near the pond in the grass. I think at night the coyotes hit her. All we found were the feathers. No body. No blood. Something killed her. It's just the feathers. There's obviously a fight. The feathers were broken, but the body wasn't there. So only the two boys are left, the father and the son. Mother was eaten. Because she walked away. You know, they can fly. You know, the father was flying way up high in the trees. He's a very good flyer. But the mother might not have been able to fly so well. Yeah,
And they run also fast. Run and fly.
that's if, you know, there's open space, but not if they're caught in the forest. That's what happens if they're caught in the forest. You want this?
Yeah, I can try this. Would you like, bro?
Take any food. What time is it?
You just said you hated it.
9:40.
I gotta go.
We're JK, I mean.
No, that's eating.
Hi, JK, actually.
My name is
JK.
My name is Glassy.
It's
I know. But that's what I yeah. No, it's like my name. Like someone's made up to like someone's last name is a J. Starts with a J and last name is an A. So he's like, I'm JK.
He made a YouTube video.
Yeah, you can think. Who did that? What are you thinking? Who did that? And
Wait, me?
no,
गुलाब जामुन लेके जाओ
oh, don't eat your
ओके बच्चों बहुत अच्छी आइडिया है चलो खाना अरे इसको छोड़ो
आदित्य मम्मा चावल दे रही है
I didn't.
my name is Star.
वन ड्रॉप कर रहा
He tried to make it.
दूसरा अपना
याद होगा
हाँ जाते नहीं तो हम गए
Legend of Darkness.
So there the starting area.
Yeah.
A personal video.
चलो भाई उसने तेरा पिक्चर सब
प्रभु जी को बच्चों को देखो खाने को
आपके ना अपना
वहाँ पे
nice class.
Hare Krishna.
There is a difference already if I attend in the lecture then only we are able to looking like that. So
What?
One more month.
Okay, thank you. सुना तो तू देखो सारे समझा तो थैंक यू प्रभु जी को
Give me what you heard.
क्या हुआ
प्रभु said one more month if you continue anything you will looking like you're reducing weight for one month.
Conscious now.
मैं तो सोच रही दोनों होमवर्क के लिए पैक किया
And if I show you,
क्या होगा मेरा
See, you're not taking grain at all.
forget about grain I want liquid
You
ice
should just stay here
Yeah, that's
forever.
what I'm saying.
yeah no grain no grain no
Bye,
nothing.
Gastya.
What time is it?
चलो अनामी का
चलो
अभी तो पैक कर रहे हैं
कुछ काम नहीं
No. Yeah. This is a
वो भी बैठे हैं
But here, what if I did magic and I said this is
हाँ
What year?
नहीं वीकेंड 13
What was the most boring thing
Augustia.
you ever had?
Augustia. You were allergic to grass.
No. He's allergic to something.
मैम से यही काफी है
Does
पर I
not
was
only-
Oh, why are you outside? What happens when you ask?
And I'm allergic to lions, tigers,
my body hurts
प्रभु जी take some if anything is left
Any
you are left Mataji we are taking Mataji you are left we will take you
a little bit.
you are such a nice cook of course I know
But hey, Augustia,
southern you teacher
I was
that's not देखो कुछ नहीं है यार
I never had
Fast reaction of vehicle is not
You, yeah, you
आदि विद्या
अभी
बैठ के उसको
I'm gonna dare me to stab you.
अच्छा चल मेरी मम्मी को भी नहीं पता कि मैं अच्छा खाना बना मुझे बोलना पड़ेगा
I have a lot of You can flip your knife over and do like this.
Arvind
1 month I used to take weight. So
Should I tell you the rules?
black.
it's like a continuous.
There's something you should understand.
I don't know why Prabhu is asking me to do rapid. God only knows. Or he knows. He is telling me there has to be a reason
Reason for what?
for asking me to do it.
You're only allowed to take out your knife when you're murdered.
I will not liquidate, but I will reduce the
Shut
food
the door,
intake.
please.
नहीं यार
And, I used to do this. Actually, there is a Ayurveda part to reduce.
अद्वित्या नीचे आओ आप खाना नहीं खाए हो नीचे आओ
So, हम लोग hardly actually are not taking anything, so there is nothing to.
It's gross.
I'm taking water balance.
No, first I tell you the gross one.
नहीं संस्कृति के लिए मुझे
In first grade,
राइट नहीं
I went to this play.
ले लो ना प्लीज कौन खाएगा
You know, it's like a little like
वो
that.
तीखा वाला नहीं राइस है तो अब क्या भेजो
नहीं रुको सोच लो
Because we cannot
It was
चावल भी ले लो
after
तो चावल भी ले लो है ना बहुत सारा चावल
Was it
So को आप दे दो.
My
ये लो,
first
ये दे दो।
I No, my first week ever.
आप भी ले लो
Whatever you take, it's fine.
When the guest.
तेरा पता नहीं क्या होगा
The worst field trip is going to
डब्बा में तो वापस नहीं चाहिए
सच करते चलो बेटा
You're going to the
माता जी
अभी तक स्टॉप
माता जी प्लीज हेल्प कर
क्या चीज के लिए
My worst field trip was in kindergarten.
आप मुझे कॉल करना अभी यही लोग
We went right in front of the kindergarten and studied a small tree. Guys, right in front. Guys, and they said it's the most funny you'll ever have in your life. It's the worst. What's the best?
डब्बा में
That's an second grade. We're in the Pacific Science Center. The only field trip I had was, I mean the only two field trips I had was going to meet lots of first graders
एक्चुअली ग्लास में ज्यादा
classes
थी
in my own school and going to a pumpkin patch.
क्या कुछ नहीं है उसका प्लेट कहीं
You know what I did? I ran. I'm full.
नो फुल खत्म कर दो
ये तरीका है खाना समझे बेटा खाओ
सुबह हम निकले हैं टेंपल में आप होंगे ना
बैठ कर खाओ अगस्त्य
नहीं तो आप मेडिसिन तो रहते हो अगर जॉब करना होगा तो जॉब कर दीजिए जाएंगे करना सुबह
चल ठीक है सुबह का
बोलो आप जैसे को नहीं समझ रहे
ऐसे अकेले वेट कर रही होगी लेकिन प्रभु भी वहाँ चले गए ना वो छोड़ने के तो मैं अभी निकलते हुए इसी आधे घंटे से वेट करेंगे पक्का निकलेंगे संस्कृति चल बेटा अभी
आपको अगर चाहिए तो अभी आपको ड्रॉप कर देंगे
नहीं नहीं
फिर
उसके
सुबह
ऊपर एक प्लेट रखना था और एक
ठीक है फिर सुबह कर दीजिए बात कर लेंगे आपसे
चलो बेटा थैंक यू
6:30 बजे
क्या
शाम को ना एक ही साथ तो है
थैंक यू माता जी फॉर डिलीशियस फूड
यू आर वेलकम मैंने तो रजिस्ट्री में साइन अप किया है डायपर के लिए एक
रजिस्ट्री
नहीं अर्चना माता जी नहीं
बेटा वो सैलेड बिना खाए
एक तो
उतना
तुम
नहीं
बहुत
होता
कम खाए हो तो जो है वो खत्म करो
बिना सैलेड खाए उतना नहीं होता
अभी लेते हो वो उसको दूसरे क्लास में उसने मूव किया हाँ वो भावे और उसको अलग अलग किया और मैंने
माता जी आज
वो लोग आई भारती कविता कोई नहीं वो दोनों है तो क्या है मेरे साथ वो लास्ट ईयर पढ़ा है ना एक दूसरी टीचर होती तो ज्यादा सही है अच्छे से खाना है बच्चा कुछ नहीं छोड़ना
बेटा वो सैलेड नहीं खाओगे तो नहीं उठ सकते
सब बराबर है
क्वांटिटी का ऐसा था कि मुझे पता नहीं था कितने आएंगे नहीं आएंगे तो बोला ठीक है तो बना के इट विल बी एडजस्टेड वो एडजस्टमेंट हो गया
आरुष आपकी क्लास में
नहीं है भव्य मेरी क्लास में है आज तो सोनाली में भी है मेल आया उसका क्या लिखी
गुड बॉय
क्या पढ़ाया था लैंग्वेज में स्टार्टेड रीडिंग
बस इधर आओ
learn names of the colors in Hindi and kids learn
वो गुलाब जामुन सोना गुलाब जामुन
इधर आओ यहाँ आओ ये लोग सब नए हैं ना सर तुम क्यों नहीं आती हो पढ़ाने
इसको कहाँ छोड़ूं
अरे आ जाओ यार असिस्टेंट जैसे ही आ जाओ
मिस्टर शर्मा मेरे को बिल्कुल नहीं छोड़ रहे हो 4:30 बजे तो अपनी क्लास में चले जाते हैं वो अपना इतना बिजी स्केड्यूल करते हैं बच्चा कहाँ जाएगा वो 4:15 बजे भगवद गीता की क्लास
थैंक यू प्रभु थैंक यू
नहीं वो बहुत खुश है
चलो अच्छा है कोई तो खुश है यहाँ तो सारे दुखी ही हैं
सब लोग खुश हैं
थैंक यू
अमित इस क्लास में तो मेरी वजह से आते हैं
गिरेगा चाशनी बैठ के तरीके से खाओ हमारा कुछ मिस नहीं हो रहा है विद्या सिंह का यहाँ है अभी खाएंगे खिलाना मतलब
उनकी 4:15 बजे क्लास होती है ना शर्मिला माता जी की
ओ अच्छा तभी
छह बजे घर आके आते हैं, मैं खाना रेडी रखती हूँ, खाना खा के जाते हैं, फिर रात को 9:30 10 बजे आते हैं, वापस एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं कि घर बिल्कुल घर आओ और बिस्तर सो जाए, पर ऐसे नहीं हो सकता। घर आते तो उसके बाद भी आधा पौना घंटा लग जाता है, कुछ किचन में रह जाता है, तो टाइम लगता है, फिर इसीलिए मैंने वो सोचना शुरू कर सकती हूँ।
चलो कुछ सही बात, क्योंकि वहाँ तो अभी नए नए, हाँ चाहिए और नए नए लोग को लाइए भारती, और बहुतों से मैं सेटिस्फाइड नहीं हूँ। हाँ मतलब भारती वही बोलती है कि तुम सिखाओ, तुम बताओ। हम बोले नहीं, तुमको देखकर लोगों को आना चाहिए। 1-2 लोग को मैंने रेकमेंड किया, कभी आएंगे कभी नहीं आएंगे। वीकली ईमेल अभी वो आज भेजी है। हाँ मैं बोलती हूँ ट्यूसडे तक भेज दो, ताकि वेडनेसडे शॉर्ट डे रहता है, बच्चे होमवर्क कर सकेंगे, क्योंकि तब तक अगर आ जाएगा तो पेरेंट्स भी पढ़ा सकेंगे थोड़ा, अगर कुछ चाहिए तो।
मतलब सैटरडे तो बिजी हो
हाँ फ्राइडे और सैटरडे तो
बिजी
कुछ ना कुछ रहता है, इट्स टू लेट टू सेंड।
वीकडे से ज्यादा वीकेंड तो बिल्कुल
बहुत बिजी यार। अभी मैं सोच रही हूँ दिवाली का कब क्लीन अप करूंगी घर।
आप करती हैं?
हाँ हमारा रोज डिस्कशन यही होता है, कब करें कब करें कब करें।
क्या चीज के लिए?
अरे दिवाली का क्लीन
करते हुए
किचन में
किचन में
आइकिया जाना है डब्बे खरीद के लाने। देखो मेरा सब ऐसे ही ठूसा रखा हुआ है, कुछ ऑर्गेनाइज नहीं है। अगले दिवाली तक फिर यही हाल हो जाएगा। चलो बैठते हैं। अद्वितीय नहीं खाए हैं? हाँ
आपने खाया?
हाँ चलो मेरा पहली बार हिसाब बराबर हुआ, कुछ नहीं बचा।
बहुत अच्छा और अच्छी बात है ना।
हाँ
कुछ कराना है तो बताओ।
नहीं कुछ नहीं, चिकन फ्रूट ये खाली ऐसे ही फ्रिज में रखा जाएगा।
कुछ तो है नहीं, सब टिकने का ही है जो से।
नहीं जैसे ये है, इसको आप 1 मिनट डाल दें सारा।
ये भागवत गीता सारा कहाँ गया? 5 उसका है मीनल का।
हरिदास प्रभु का भी पढ़ रखा है।
कहाँ?
ये सामने।
हाँ वो तो मैंने खा लिया। ये खाई नहीं आज फ्रूट।
आज इतना वो पनीर
खा के खुश हो
है ना।
खाली फ्रूट को अंदर हम लोग रख।
आज कैंटल बहुत अच्छा है। कभी कभी वो फ्रूट का अलग ही फ्लेवर आता है ना, बहुत मीठा है।
वाटरमेलन तो देख के ही लग रहा था कि मीठा नहीं है।
हाँ आजकल नहीं आ रही वाटरमेलन, गंदा आ रहा है। शायद सीजन का फर्क।
छोड़ दे शीशा। ये वाला वो खा लो, ये छूटा हुआ है। हाँ डाल दो। बाकी कुछ नहीं। नहीं लाओ तो शीतल उसका प्लेट देना तो अद्वितीय। क्या करें? उसका प्लेट वहाँ से थोड़ा पकड़ा।
बितेगा ना? हाँ उसको अच्छा लगेगा उसी का।
खाएं तब।
नहीं सुनो, और ये करके डाल दो, ये उसी से खाएगा।
चलो ये हटा दो। उसको इसमें डाल दो। इसका एक ढक्कन हुआ करता था यहाँ पे। एक बाद में ना बाद में तो एक देख के हटाएंगे थोड़ी, ठीक है?
हाँ ठीक है, छोड़ दो।
और विजय सिंह पीने में दूध तो बहुत बताओ। सो गया तभी परेशान था।
उसकी नैप ये एक बार उड़ जाए तो फिर 1.5-2 घंटे लगते हैं। इधर या उसमें कर दूंगा।
एकदम जब तक जागे रहते ये लोग एकदम हाइपर एक्टिव सो जाते तो लगता है
खा के आया था तो पेट उसका भरा हुआ था, पर
मेरे को फुल ओवर ईटिंग हो गई है। मैं खा तो नहीं। ओवर ईटिंग हो गई है। मैंने कहा मतलब घर में खाना फिर एकदम मसाले नहीं मैंने कहा तो फिर बोला बिल्कुल ही खाना पड़ेगा, मैं छोड़ नहीं सकता। मैं घर में बिल्कुल ऐसे छोले खाता हूँ, सब्जी हो खाता हूँ।
मैं उनको वही बता रही हूँ।
आपको सबको ना ऊपर लाल मिर्च डाल के देनी चाहिए। आपको हाँ आपको लाल मिर्च डाल के दूँ तब कहेंगे मजा।
अच्छा पता नहीं कैसे गए, नमक भी हल्का था पर सब बोले बहुत टेस्टी है।
गाड़ी गाड़ी जाता है ना तो फिर छोड़ेगा सो जा
या आप लेके गाड़ी में बैठा दो।
वो भी गर्दन उठा के देखना चाहते
देख रहा हूँ बच्चे कहाँ मैं बाहर कैसे आऊँ खेलूँ। उसका आजकल रूटीन हो गया, जैसे उठते सबसे पहले आरुष की टॉयज पे हमला करता है, अपने टॉयज को नहीं देखता।
सो भी मैं बोलता हूँ अगस्त से बेटा
शीतल जा कोई नहीं, वो तो
मेरा
और नहीं
सुनने वाला
सुनेगा।
नहीं है, वो लोग सुन के हम सुना कर देते हैं।
तो आज आपने इलैबोरेटेड प्लान कैसे बना लिया?
प्रभु जी आज तो वही
आज हम लोग
दामोदर
क्लास नहीं होगा, प्रभु जी दामोदर वाला जो है उसके बारे में कुछ बोलेंगे, होगा क्लास से तो नहीं पता, ठीक है।
नहीं, और एक्चुअली हमारे यहाँ भी नहीं आने वाला था ना, मतलब मूर्ति नहीं आने वाली थी, कोई और के घर जाने वाली थी।
और वो लोग आए नहीं ना,
वो लोग नहीं आए।
समझा नहीं मूर्ति का क्या कॉन्सेप्ट है?
वो दामोदर
किसी के घर जाने वाली थी, उसका क्या
मतलब आज का दिन का कोई बोला कि हमारे यहाँ करवा दो, तो ताकि उन्होंने बोला लेकिन कि विकास के यहाँ पे फिक्स कर दिया है ये चाहिए, तो वी कैन डू, बट दे वांटेड टू डू इट टुडे, तो वो लोग का 2 हफ्ते बाद, तो वो लोग बोले थे कि हम आपके घर पे आ जाएंगे।
हाँ, दोपहर के बाद 11:30 आएगा, 11:30 खत्म होगा, 11 बजे कब खत्म होगा?
11:30 तक चलता है।
हाँ, 12 कभी भी आ जाएगा दोपहर को। हाँ
ठीक है, खाना खा के आ जाइए, फिर डैडी छोड़ते हैं।
मैं भी छोड़ दूँगी।
Mama,
Huh?
can you, for the next recording, can you give me $5?
ओके बाय। ओके मैं उसको
Because you never give me anything.
ओके। अगर से बुक ऑर्डर लाइब्रेरी इतना बड़ा किस लिए है?
Yeah, we don't order books.
ये टाइट नहीं है, टाइट
Check
और
out
इसकी
books.
सॉक्स कहाँ रखी तुमने? सॉक्स तो डाल दो यार, ठंडा है।
अगर से अद्वित को बोलो नीचे आके वो अपना डिनर खाएगा। तो आप लोगों को डेट नहीं मिली मूर्ति के लिए? दामोदर तारका प्रभु तो सबको दे रहे हैं स्लॉट। नहीं, वो अपने से ही, हम लोग ने भी बोला नहीं कि आपको चाहिए।
बोला नहीं था,
हाँ।
तो वो बोले कि this Friday.
दिस फ्राइडे इज योर हाउस।
पूजा माता जी बोल के गए हैं अभी।
मंडे को उनके वहाँ, तो वो अपने से ही बोल देते हैं उनके घर उनके
चार
घर जाना।
फैमिलीज को ही बुलाए हैं, उन्होंने ऐसे बोला।
हाँ मतलब अपना
हरिलास तुम जा रहे थे?
हाँ
हाँ
हरिलास प्रभु ने अनाउंसमेंट करी थी, अनाउंसमेंट करी थी हरिलास प्रभु ने खुद कि अरे अभी करी थी ना उन्होंने किसी लेक्चर में, मैंने सुना था, उन्होंने बोला कि दामोदर हम आप इफ यू वांट वी कैन कम टू योर
वो
होम
बेबी उठ जाएगा डर के मारे।
तो अपने किसी अपने
काम करो।
तो फिर क्या करेंगे मतलब जैसे
तो जैसे तारका प्रभु घर पे मैं गया था, खाली दामोदर अष्टकम पढ़ के उसको एक्सप्लेनेशन किया, तो पढ़ नहीं
नहीं, वो इसीलिए बुलाए उस दिन क्योंकि बर्थडे थी।
आपने उस दिन बुलाया कि उस दिन आपका और कोई काम हो जाए तो डबल इवेंट हो जाएगा, डबल बोनस या
27 को कर सकते हैं।
हाँ
27 इसका ही बर्थडे।
हाँ, तो बस आप उस दिन कर लो।
फिर हो गया
फिर
ना
27 आपके घर होगी ना संगत,
वही हम अपने घर कर लेंगे।
हाँ।
वही बात है,
वही
हमारे घर
तो
में
वही हम आप अपने घर में कर लेते हैं, क्लास भी हो जाएगी।
नहीं, फ्राइडे जिनके भी घर मूर्ति जाएगी उनके घर क्लास होगी।
तो फिर हमारे घर कर लें।
हाँ,
27
हमारे घर कर लेते हैं
तारका
बर्थडे।
प्रभु को बोल
इसका
दीजिए।
ना गोपाष्टमी हो के दिन बर्थडे होता है।
तारका प्रभु को बोल दीजिए।
आप बोल दो,
दामोदर
तारका
अष्टकम
प्रभु।
प्रोग्राम मेरे घर में, और वो मैं क्लास में भी जाता हूँ तो क्लास भी हो जाएगी।
तो फिर प्रसाद भी हम कर लेंगे और
और फिर हम मतलब बस फिर हम अपने किसी को बुलाए ना, फिर हम जो
हाँ तो मैंने भी वही किया था, मैंने खाली कुछ लोगों को और बुलाया क्योंकि और ज़्यादा नहीं कर सकता था मैं।
हाँ मतलब
हम हम तब नहीं कर सकते, हम और भी स्मॉलर
हाँ,
इसलिए
मुझे माता जी बोली कि you should call all the Vaishnavas, you should feed all the Vaishnavas. I said माता जी हमारे ग्रुप में जितने हैं वो आए तो काफी है।
कितना हो गया था, बार-बार अच्छा नहीं लग रहा था।
हाँ।
फिर प्रभु जी मतलब आप बैठे थे ना
Right.
पीछे आके, तो फिर अंदर से ऐसे शोर है।
हम्म।
और हमारा
बच्चे
घर
बहुत ज़्यादा थे,
हमारा तो घर भी
बच्चे मतलब जैसे कि उनकी लड़की के एज के,
तो बर्थडे
तो हाँ तो वही बात है, मतलब बच्चे
बर्थडे मूड से आते हैं लोग, तो फिर मूड वही रहता है।
क्लास वाली बात नहीं रहती। नहीं फिर अपने घर में करेंगे तो हम नहीं बुला
फिर हम अपने गीता
बस ये है कि माँ जो आसपास माता जी रहती तो कोई रहता भी नहीं है।
दिनेश माता जी तो क्लास में आती है।
वाणी को बुलाओ, वो भी चले जाएंगे। चलो बाबू चलो,
ठीक है, गुड आइडिया।
आप बता दो।
देखा
हाँ,
डबल
वो
बनाने
slot
निकल गया,
book करना।
1 साल हो गया बच्चा अभी देखो।
आरुष
बोल इसका वैसे तो इसका नवंबर 7
निकाल के गया वो।
गोपाष्टमी को हुआ था, 27 की गोपाष्टमी। सोच रहे थे कि इसकी उसमें क्या करेंगे उपासनी में, तो
यही बेस्ट है ना, आपके इधर भगवान जी भी आ जाएंगे।
तो करना
नहीं,
क्या
ये
होता है?
मंदिर का है अपना।
अच्छा,
जिनके घर पूजा हो रहा है उनके घर।
आपके घर का आपके
मैं ये कविता के घर से लाई हूँ, कसम प्रभु के घर। उनके घर मंडे को था।
प्रभु जी हर दिन किसी घर जा रहे हैं, वो
अच्छा
वो
हर दिन किसी के घर जा रहा है।
पूरा एकदम ट्रैवल बैक है।
अच्छा
तो फिर इसमें करना क्या है, हमें क्या करना है?
कुछ नहीं बाबू,
मेन
टेबल
था
सेटअप
आप
करना
देर से
है।
पहुंचे, वो दिया जलाए हम लोग ने बस।
हाँ,
That was
कैसे
it.
चलाना है, उससे पहले क्या करना है?
कुछ नहीं बाबू, टेबल सेटअप करना है ना, बस
टेबल
ऐसे
सेटअप करो,
करके।
दिया का सेटअप करो, और प्रभु जी दामोदर
तो
अष्टकम
दिया आपने ये लेके आए हो?
नहीं, मैं तो आटे का बनाई हूँ।
मैं दूसरे ले आती हूँ,
दिया
मिट्टी के ला सकते
मिट्टी
हैं।
के लेके आओ, उसमें वो डालो, खत्म करो।
मिल जाएंगे मिट्टी के दिए, अभी दिवाली है, धनतेरस है, पहले ही लेके रखो।
पर ये है कि घी बहुत मत डालना, इसीलिए मैंने छोटे छोटे लक्ष्मी माता जी बोली इतना छोटा दिया बनाएगा। बोले माता जी केवल बाती भीगने लायक उसमें घी है।
हाँ, आप
वो तो जैसे
दो-
मंदिर में क्या
एक
करते
मिनट
हैं,
जलेगा ना।
इतने घी में सीधा सिर्फ वो ऐसे डाल के रखते हैं, बस उतना ही चाहिए, एक्स्ट्रा तो ना दिया जला सकते हैं।
क्योंकि उसमें रीयूज मना है, उसको एक जले
इसका
में जितना देर जितना देर आग जला
दिया।
वो दिया को बुझा के दूसरा नया कापूस डालना।
इसके लिए मैं नहीं खरीदी हूँ, क्योंकि जितना दिया खरीदोगे आप।
तो फिर कम से कम आपको 20 तो लग जाएगा, 20
नहीं नहीं नहीं, दिया का रीयूज नहीं है, जो कापूस है ना वो निकाल के दूसरा कापूस डालो।
आरुष
तो फिर reuse किसका
आ
है?
जाओ यार।
जो कापूस है,
हाँ, हाँ, वो तो मैं समझता हूँ।
बस वो तो नहीं करेगी।
मतलब जैसे टेम्पल में मैं क्या करते हैं, जैसे कोई यूज कर लेता है ना, तो उसको थोड़ा सा वाटर स्प्रिंकल कर देता हूँ, उस साथ में वो रखा होता है,
हाँ, हाँ,
उसका हल्का स्प्रिंकल कर देता हूँ, क्योंकि उसको धोने का तो इतना
हाँ,
होएगा
हाँ,
नहीं,
हाँ,
तो उसका हल्का सा वाटर स्प्रिंकल किया, उसमें दूसरा नया फ्रेश डाला।
हाँ, बस उतना ही है।
चलो डैडी देखो दे दिया वो।
Did you put the thing inside?
Everything, चलो।
चलो ठीक है, थैंक यू।
चलो लास्ट अभी जाने वाले हो जाएंगे, ये नहीं देना।
ओके।
जाओ यार, वो ट्रस्ट करते हैं हमारे।
अच्छा, यहाँ बैग आपका है? हरे कृष्णा को ठीक है।
अद्वैत खाने को आओ नीचे आप।
सही बाबू।
कल आरुष आएगा खेलने फिर से।
आदित्य बेटा, भैया को प्यार से देखो बेटा, तुम उसको क्यों कर रहे हो?
Because he's hungry.
अद्वैत yeah,
Papa will feed him very slowly.
जाओ तुम जाओ, वाइल्ड क्राफ्ट देखो, चेंज करके खा लो पहले। हाँ, डैडी इसको खिला दो। Yeah, the news
Who
child.
shouted? बेटा, you hurt my ear.
घर का भगवत गीता उठा के लेके गए थे।
सुना, कोई लेके तो नहीं जाना चाहिए। एक यहाँ पे है, 5 घर का वापस आएगा नहीं, उसने जो दिया था।
उसका 5 नहीं है, उसका 2 4 है। एक उसका कोई लेके गया।
एक मैंने उसको दिया था, का उधर है ना 3।
हाँ, और हम लोग का 2 गायब है।
एक इधर है तुम्हारा,
हाँ? उसको अनप्लेट
मतलब एक
करो।
कम है ही है मतलब।
अद्वितीय को खिलाओ पहले।
हाँ।
अगस्त्य वेरी गुड भगवत गीता।
The wild crabs. Wild crabs. Wild crabs. You the crab brother? Crabs. Crab brother. Crab brother. Oh, let's see what this does. Oh, let's see what this does.
अद्वितीय को खिलाओ ना, यही सबका संग खिलाओ, खा लेगा।
दबाओ। No, close your mouth. Press it.
Especially on these foods. Oh,
You have
oh,
to
oh, 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 wow. Oh, and one of my tooth is so
Wiggly?
wiggly.
लेकिन उसको थोड़ा गर्म करके खिला दो लड़के को।
मैं दे रहा हूँ ना।
Usually nice it for weird day. Like horizontal.
हरी विलास प्रभु को भी खाना इतना पसंद आ गया।
सुना, इसका
Oh, look! YouTube changed! Quickly!
ना, बाद में देखते हैं।
नहीं, कमरे दूसरा नीचे से एक नया आ रहा है, चल रहा है।
वो क्योंकि वो हिलता होगा, वो दिखाता नहीं होगा।
It's barely wiggling.
आदित्य, आजा, इधर बैठे।
अब ये सफाई का सूची पर पूरा इसमें जाएगा।
इधर बैठ जाओ, यहाँ। इधर बैठिए।
अगस्त्य दूध पीने आओ। उसको फल का संग देना, फटाफट घूटेगा।
आदित्य,
First I need to kiss you. Oh my god, kiss you, kiss me, kiss you. Oh my god, what is this? need to search up wild.
अगर से बेटा वो अंगूर वाला बॉटल लेकर आओ तो अंगूर वाला लाओ और इसको खिलाओ सुन बोलो एक एक बैठे खाते रहेगा
Yeah, here.
अदिति if you're not going
किसको दे रहे हो अंगूर? अगस्त्या को?
हाँ
अगस्त्या दूध पीने जा रहा है। अगस्त्या
रोटी है सॉरी क्या बोलते हैं चावल अदिति अगर वही टाइम से खा ले होते ना तो अभी हम लोग सोने चले जाते
नखरा ना सारा दुनिया खा ले, इसलिए इस लोग को पहले मैं खिलाती हूँ, क्लास से पहले।
Yeah, and all the paneer was gone.
क्योंकि पनीर तुमको पता है ना कैसे that's a good thing it's gone don't eat you'll never get anything hey come here
One day there was
come here
She's drinking milk.
Yeah.
ड्रिंकिंग मिल्क ठीक है एक मुंह में डाल के खा नहीं सकते
It's time to
Hello, Sunita. Oh, hello, darling.
Hmm.
Nice day. Sunita, I was wondering if you've seen the
we are not supposed to just sit like that
मैं थोड़ा सा गरम मसाला अपना बनाई, हाँ
हाँ सुनो
वो छोला में डाली, ये वो अच्छा लगा है लगता है।
वेरी गुड यार आप बहुत अच्छा खाना बनाई सुना वेरी गुड
हरिविलास प्रभु क्या बोले?
पनीर इज गुड
That way. Follow those crab brothers.
Don't do that, okay?
Master of stealth.
Drink.
अदिति
सारे लोग सोने चले गए।
फुल
Sister and a brother.
अदिति आप ये लाइट ऑफ कर सकते हैं खड़े
I love the tiger cubs have blue eyes before they turn.
just pull it from the bottom just pull it from the bottom no दो नीचे नीचे plug
These tiger cubs love to practice their tiger moves. Wow. Queen
हाँ जी।
Stealth must know what she's
now
doing.
आपके आँख में वो लाइट नहीं लगेगी
Tiger cubs. Yeah, she rules the place. Totally in tune.
अदिति पलटी करके आराम से बैठो इधर इधर घूम के पापा की तरफ
If anybody reach your sense back, it's her. Yes, we have to tap into the tiger's incredible awareness of the forest. Hey, Fred! Check it out. Some fur. Aviva, come in. Tracker's here. Come in, Aviva.
Well, it's about time. We were looking all over for you.
Actually, we're in what you might call a slump. We really need your help. Yeah, we need to be more like tigers and figure out tiger power. Can you help us?
Okay, we will. But I'm only doing it because my future inventions depend on you guys being sharp out there. And because we love tigers.
Thanks, Kobe.
No,
Thanks,
sir.
Aviva.
Aditya we are here to eat
Let's go.
main thing is eat then watch TV
So far, so
okay
good. No wonder the tiger is such an awesome predator. Its senses of sight, smell, and hearing
Papa.
are top
जी
notch. What
In
did
this?
हम्म
In the TV?
हिंदी में हाँ टीवी में
Did you know
उसमें TV में
हम्म
real tigers है और कार्टून में
awesome?
real tigers नहीं रखे हैं।
हाँ
Okay, Jimmy, we're ready to test the car prototype. Wow, it's about as big as my face. It's in stealth mode now. See? No claws showing. Just sound muffling pads and air to
Recording चल ही रहा है।